Welcome, fight fans, to the TitleFight.com roundtable. Gordon Smile and Steve Gallegos on the line. We are going to touch on a couple hot topics here. Last weekend, we had a pretty interesting showdown of undefeated welterweights take place between Sean Porter, defending his IBF welterweight strap, against a person coming over all the way across the pond from the UK, Kell Brook. And a lot of people were really dismissing Kell Brook, weren't they, Steve? At least I believe so myself. Didn't seem like they gave him the benefit of the doubt that he was going to come in and even stand too much of a chance. You know, I was tweeting other people from the UK, and actually even a lot of them, although they wanted their guy to fight and win, they were even predicting possibly Porter going to be KOing Brook, which was far from the case. You know, the bigger man, he remained composed the whole time during the fight. Really kind of surprised myself, the way he handled himself. What was your overall take on that, Steve?
Well, I thought it was a great performance by Kell Brook. He came in, and he fought an excellent fight. He had a great game plan. He kept that jab in Porter's face all night. Just wouldn't let Porter get inside. And when Porter did get inside, he did the right thing by tying him up, keeping him close, and not letting him get off any shots, and just kept doing that all night long. I got to give him all the credit in the world. He fought the perfect fight, and he earned that decision.
Yeah, I agree with you there. A disappointing defeat for Porter, although he handled himself pretty well in the post-fight interview, saying that, he didn't believe he lost. He still carries himself like a champion, and he's looking forward to a rematch. Right off the cuff, Brook and very ecstatic about winning his first world title and taking it on U.S. soil, like many who have came before him. Started going off already about potential fighters up in the lineup now that he'd like to face. Some big money fights, Of course, everybody's first name that comes out of their mouth, Floyd Mayweather, Amir Khan, and surprisingly enough, even Keith Thurman's name was dropped in there. But before we jump into that piece right there, what are the probabilities of actually Porter landing a rematch with Brook, Steve? What do you think, being that he's got Al Heyman in his corner? Do you think pre-fight they had that already in place and negotiated of a rematch clause? What do you think?
Well, if a rematch clause is in place, I would suggest that he exercise that. I mean, it was. I think a rematch probably. I wouldn't want to see it, but say for instance, Porter goes over to the UK and challenges Brook there. He basically said he'll find him he'll get him wherever he can find him. So why not do it in the UK? It'll be a big fight. The UK fans, are very ecstatic. They support their own. It'd be a big event.
And hypothetically, if he does have a rematch clause in place, but somehow they happen to get around that, whether, paying him off to sidestep him for a fight and taking on another fight down the table, what do you think's in place for it here, Steve? I mean, a big money fight, of course, would be a showdown between him and Amir Khan, right? A lot of bad blood between the two, and obviously sellout. You could see the O2 Arena being sold out for a fight like this. I mean, that would just be a big fight for the UK as a whole. What do you think's next? The next logical step? They're already talking about him coming up by the end of this year and already having the next fight in place. What do you think is a good matchup for him, or even the one that he was dropping and been kind of circulating a lot and building some buzz with Thurman? He was there, front and center with intentions, checking out who his possible next opponent was going to be as well. His promoter, Golden Boy, has already stated, hey, Thurman's more than willing to take the trip over across the pond and face him and take away that strap from him. What do you think's on the table?
Either one of them fights, is possible. The Khan fight probably makes the most sense, being the fact they're both from the UK. They both got huge fan bases there. It will be a huge event. The O2 Arena will probably be sold out. They could probably sell that thing out 3 times. It would be a large, ecstatic soccer-style crowd, very, very loud. It would be one hell of an event, I think it'd be bigger than Froch and Kessler. So, I think that'd be the biggest event that could be made right now. But a fight with Thurman will also be very lucrative. It'd be a good matchup. I'd be curious to see how Thurman would handle, a fighter of Brook's magnitude. So it'd be an interesting matchup of styles. And if Thurman were to go to the UK and challenge him, more power to him. That just shows that he's willing to fight anybody, anywhere.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of interesting options here that are possibly going to take place, so we'll look forward to seeing how all this plays out here. On the undercard, briefly, let's touch base on a couple of these bouts here. We know that Durrell ended up taking his strap away from Saki Obika in an ugly fight, right? A little bit of a rough fight to watch. I mean, props to Durrell, though. He took the title. He's got that on his plate now. It's been a long time coming for him. He was after it. He ended up taking it finally. What was your overall take on that fight, Steve? What's next on the table for Durrell? He's been on the back burner for a minute now. What do you think's going to happen next?
Well, it's a good win for him, because he's also had to overcome, sickness and disease, and he's overcome that to come back, win a world title. It was a very, very ugly fight, very, hard to watch, because a lot of grappling, really, a lot of fouls, it was just a sloppy fight. Durrell did get the job done, got that win, in a rematch. So, kudos to him, being in fact, as 168 pounds, a lot of lucrative fights out there for him, so, sky's the limit if he wants to challenge, guys like, the Frotches or the Kesslers or the Groves, he can do any of that. So, basically, a Frotch, Durrell fight would probably be pretty good, basically Frotch fought, his brother Andre, a few years ago. There's some bad blood between, the Frotches and the Durrells, so that would be a good match.
Yeah, it could be a good matchup there. Although it kind of seems like in the polls anyway, Golovkin's headed for a clash with Frotch. At least I'd love to see that. So I don't know what's going to happen next with that. But yeah, some interesting options for him as well. On the opening televised bout of the evening there, we ended up seeing a fan-friendly fighter here, Omar Figueroa, coming up in another rough fight for the young guy. I mean, he's came up against Daniel Estrada from Mexico City in a pretty rough and rugged fight there himself there, and this kid seems to always be in a tough fight. Ended up coming back from a round where his corner was just about to stop the fight. He told him, no, don't stop the fight, goes out and closes the show. Pretty dramatic fashion there, just made you wonder, hey, maybe he believed that it was close to the end there and he had to do something about it. So props to Figueroa on being able to close the show that way. This kid has been on the collision course with some rough fights very early. Been kind of contemplating about, are we going to be seeing him on a short shelf life here? And if it is, is he just going to be one of those guys that gives us some great fights? Look at the roster that he's up and facing against here on that lightweight list. He's got guys like Terrence Crawford, who's been obviously making some waves and stopping Gamboa recently. Gamboa's on the table. Beltran, Juan Diaz. We got some hard hitters there. We got Jorge Linares, who was actually fighting that night too, in hopes of lining up a title shot against Figueroa. What do you think how do you think Figueroa's progression has been up to this point, and what's next for him?
It's been an exciting run for him in terms of fan-friendly fights. You never see Figueroa in a real bad fight, with the exception of maybe the Belmontes fight. But, you're always going to get, action. You're going to get fireworks anytime Figueroa fights. It's unfortunate that, he gets in there. He loves to bang. He loves to, he takes a lot of shots. That does, make for a short career. As long as we have him, let's enjoy him. So, anybody that he steps in the ring with, is going to make for a good fight. He, a lot of the matchups are winnable matchups. I can see him clashing with Beltran. That would be one hell of a fight. That could be fight of the year right there. Ricky Burns, who lost his title to the Terrence Crawford earlier this year, that would be a good fight too. Maybe a clash with Crawford down the road, but I think Crawford would school him big time. But a lot of good matchups there. Some exciting fights. So basically, anybody that Figueroa steps in the ring with, it's going to be a good fight.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And making headlines today, even though these guys haven't even promoted a fight yet. You know, they've obviously been on the helm of a lot of news for their waves in the music industry, and that we're talking about Roc Nation, founded by Jay-Z and friends. Moving into the sports realm with Roc Nation Sports, you know, these guys have already jumped into the scene, thrown their hat in the bucket here, talking about starting the boxing promotion business here. They've hired some pretty heavy hitters to come in and lead the charge here on this new venture that they got. And then actually by surprise as well, you know, we heard today that they came in and threw their bid on a purse bid for Peter Quillen versus Matt Korobov, which they ended up outbidding the highest bidder, Golden Boy, by a good margin there as well. What's your take, Steve, on Jay-Z and Roc Nation Sports jumping into the boxing promoting business? They're already in the sports realm, and they've been in the sports realm for a minute now, representing other athletes, professional athletes in the baseball industry, basketball, even football. But what about boxing now? Is this a totally different monster than what they've dealt with before? Is this a good thing for the sport? What do you think?
You know, I think it's a good thing for the sport. You know, they're going to jump in. They definitely know business very well. They have their experience within boxing. You know, they've hired a very good team that's got quite a bit of connections in the sport of boxing, well, a lot of experience. I mean, of course, Jay-Z's been, you know, in the boxing game for a few years now, since he opened up the Barclays Center. I mean, a lot of big, high-profile matches has been held at his arena, so he's got you know, good relationship with Al Heyman and Golden Boy Promotions. Even though he outbidded them for this fight, I can still see them working together and putting on some good cards. You know, that Roc Nation basically said they're willing to work with any manager, promoter, you know, etc. So I think it's good. But I can see them working a lot with Golden Boy and Al Heyman, because they already have that relationship with you know, with them and a lot of their fighters, you know, based on the Barclays Center.
Sure. I mean, one thing that they did make note of that they do bring to the table is the whole branding piece, you know, not just branding the fighter from leading up into fight night, but outside of the fight as well, you know, outside of the ring, and building corporate relationships with these fighters that, you know, a lot of them don't have those types of relationships, don't have that type of income stream coming in, and that's something that's well known in the boxing industry. You know, you see a lot of fighters that aren't on that top echelon there, you know, they don't reach that pinnacle of proverbial success. They're not able to bring in that big money that some of these other superstar athletes aren't able to bring. Roc Nation is basically throwing out the pitch that, hey, we can give these guys celebrity status that they don't have. Do you think that's true?
I think they do. I think they got the, you know, they do got the team that can give them that push. You know, like I said, they know business very well. It'd be interesting to see how they handle some of these fighters, because they definitely handle a lot of their other athletes very well. So
sure.
I look forward to seeing them really take care of some of these boxers and help them, you know, not just inside the ring but outside the ring as well.
Well, they're off to a good start. I mean, they outbid Golden Boy by a good margin on that purse bid for Peter Quillen and Matt Korobov. So, you know, those guys are going to benefit right off the bat from that purse bid as well. So maybe that's a good sign of what's to come. We'll take a seat back and see what happens there for it. Well, thanks for tuning in again, fight fans. Once again, Gordon Tamayo and Steve Gallegos with TheTitleFight.com. Until next time.